Hello, this is Orlando Mayor Buddy Dyer.
Welcome home.
Soar into tower. We are ready for takeoff.
Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Hey, it's Amy from DVC Clubhouse.
Hey Clubbers, it's Scott from DVC Clubhouse.
Hey, it's Kathleen from DVC Clubhouse.
Welcome aboard. It's Phil from DVC Clubhouse.
Hey, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Debrief Podcast. This is Amy, and I am joined today by Phil. Hey, Phil.
Welcome aboard, guys.
How's it going? We had a couple of weeks where we had Kathleen and Scott, and now it's back to just the two of us.
Yeah, it's really my fault. Kathleen can only do weekends just because of the time difference. And let's see, this last week was Easter. Next week, I'm in San Antonio. The week after that, I'm in DC. And then, is it the week after that? I don't know. It's some week in the near future coming up. I'll be in Florida. So Sundays have been very limited.
Well, and I'm away next week. A week from this Thursday, I'm leaving to go to Orlando because the next day I'm sailing on the Disney Wish by myself for a 3-night cruise. For the first time I've ever done an actual solo cruise. I've gone with Emma where it has felt like a solo cruise because she has gone to the teen club the entire time. But this time I'm actually going by myself because I won a contest for my travel agency for the person who sold the most Disney cruises would get a Disney cruise. So I'm redeeming my prize. So
two thoughts. Number one, I would intentionally sell the least number of cruises just so I didn't have to take the prize of going on a cruise. Number two, has it ever occurred to you how every time you guys are going to Orlando, you tell everyone exactly when you're going, and I am super duper cagey about when I may or may not be in town?
Yep. I have noticed that. But on this trip, I'm not
never
even
let them know where you're going to be or when you're
property.
going to be there.
I'm literally.
We talked over each other.
Well,
What
it's
was
funny
that?
because I'm not setting foot on Disney property at all. I'm flying in on Thursday late afternoon, and then I am staying at the Sheraton near the Orlando airport, and then when I get off the ship, I'm heading right back to the airport and flying home. But what's funny is that we've got a member of the group who is going to be on the cruise directly before me. So she will be getting off the day that I'm getting on. And then another member of the group is getting on the ship when I'm getting off. So we will literally be ships passing in the night, and I will not see any unless unexpectedly I run into somebody on the Disney Wish. I don't think that I will be seeing anybody next week when I am there. So
My condolences to all three of you.
well, I'm really looking forward to it. I am really needing some relaxation because this process of selling my house and everything that's involved with it, we're under contract, but there's just all of the things, and it's been stressful, and I've been looking for a place to live. So at least I get to live on a cruise ship for 3 nights and have all of my meals prepared for me and don't need to worry about any of that for a little while. So anyway, but that is not what we are talking about today.
What are we talking about today?
So Kathleen and I actually were texting over the weekend about whether or not, she actually brought it up that she's kind of thinking about Lakeshore Lodge, and if it's really while she's excited about that resort and staying there, the fact that there's a resale restriction on that resort is something that is starting to weigh on her as a reason to not buy there. Now, I know that for you, that is not the reason to not buy there. I know that you don't care about that resort at all. But
that's not even on the list of reasons not to buy there.
But it did make me start to think about, as we get further along and get closer to 2042, and as the newer resorts, we've got, it started with Riviera, then the cabins at Fort Wilderness, villas at Disneyland Hotel, and now Lakeshore Lodge, all of the new hotels that they're going to build are going to have these resale restrictions. So the question becomes, does it become more of a deterrent or less of a deterrent that there is resale restrictions in place for these resorts when we are now, what are we, 16 years away from uh, this, Boardwalk Beach Club, Boulder Ridge, some of the old Key West contracts expiring. And then shortly thereafter, we're going to see Saratoga and Animal Kingdom Lodge expire. So does it really matter that there are going to be resale restrictions? And if you are, there are so many different like layers to that as to whether or not it actually matters. And I mean, really, it only really matters if you think that at some point you might have to or need to sell. I mean, I don't think anybody buys it thinking that a few years down the road something so life changing is going to happen that financially you need to sell it, or just lifestyle wise you need to sell it. But do the restrictions actually come into play? So I don't know, what are your initial thoughts to that? And look, I know that with the exception of the villas at the Disneyland Hotel, you're not interested in any of the resorts. But insofar as the restrictions go, let's say that they were to build a resort that you love, would it deter you from buying there if there were resale restrictions?
Well, it's interesting because you posed this question before we started recording, and I've never looked at it from the standpoint of the 2042 resorts. I've looked deeply at the 2042 resorts. We considered buying a beach club. That was really our first thought process when we started thinking about DVC. Now, granted, at the time, there were a lot more years left, so it wasn't weighing as heavily on us as far as what the expiration date was going to be. And I've thought a lot about whether or not those were good, sound financial buys, or as good and sound of a financial buy as DVC can be, admittedly. But I've never thought about it from the prospect of the resale restrictions, mainly because once we bought into the resort that we liked, and then with the addition of really there only being one newer hotel that I like, I've never really thought about it from this standpoint. When you buy into DVC, you don't typically buy in thinking about what is the resale value going to be. You buy in based on the feeling and the nostalgia, and we want to keep coming back. But it would be a lie to say that I haven't thought about it. The kids are getting older, school is getting tighter. We're looking, potentially at property down in Florida. And what I could sell my contracts for is a very nice addition to the money I've got put aside for that property. So I've really got to take a minute here and think about whether or not, take a step back and think to myself, if there was a property I liked, would it make a difference to me on the 2042 resorts? Because I just think there's so many other things that factor into the 2042 resorts and their value and their worth that resale restrictions has just never come front of mind for me.
Well, you and I touched on it a few episodes back when we talked about after my stay at Boardwalk, how all of a sudden I started thinking, oh my gosh, am I going to buy a contract at Boardwalk? And I mean, if I did that, I haven't really weighed out whether I would do it direct or resale. I mean, it would probably make sense to do it resale. I don't even know, what inventory is like from a direct standpoint, but I'm in a position now since I sold my beach club that I don't have a direct contract. And I would like to have a direct contract because I do want to have the ability to stay at all of the Disney Vacation Club resorts. Now I have stayed at them all. And this is where I started going down like several different spirals, and I could make an argument in really any direction. And I think because right now, the life stage that I'm in, I don't really care where I stay because I'm not traveling with my kids or specifically with young children anymore. So it doesn't really
Right. And
matter
you're
to me
not
where I
as
stay.
big into the theme parks as we are. Like, you're perfectly happy making the best of a resort stay, where to me, location is so key to where we stay and when we stay that it's a huge burden upon us for how we're going to get that perfect reservation. Whereas you enjoy resort hopping and you enjoy all the things that happen in and around the whole Walt Disney World complex in Orlando. So, yeah, I mean, it makes a huge difference. I think if you're at the point where you're like, look, as long as I can find a place to stay and it's not somewhere I really don't like, then you're in really good shape. Where with us, I think it changes the equation because really all the places I want to stay are in those original 14. So it really grossly changes the math and the emotion and how it plays into it.
And then there's the part of me also that thinks, I'm still in a fixed moment in time where I'm not traveling with my kids or small children, because presumably at some point down the road, one or both of my kids might have kids, and I may want, at that point, location will matter to me. So and so therefore, if I were to buy it direct, clearly that wouldn't be an issue. It is an issue for me right now, only owning at Copper Creek, because it doesn't give me access to Riviera or the villas at the Disneyland Hotel or the cabins. And for anybody who does not own only resale. I at one point owned resale and direct. So when I would be doing my searches for inventory, I could see everything. But as soon as I sold my beach club, I could no longer even see the availability on those resorts, which felt like, I couldn't even then know, like, is there availability at these places that I cannot stay at with my points? And so it did give me kind of like a little bit of like, the acknowledgement that these are not even resorts that I could stay at if I wanted to. But as I look forward at, we've discussed that I am somebody who has been considering and have been very excited about buying Lakeshore Lodge. Do the resale restrictions come into play for me? And, Kathleen was saying, like, well, it feels like it's holding her back a little bit, because what if she did need to sell down the road at some point? And then would it be harder to unload? And so, so I think that I'm of the mind that I think that it really only matters if you're somebody who is carrying, that you put very little down on your contract, and you're paying off the contract plus paying your dues. It can feel daunting to think, well, what if something happens? What if I lose my job? What if I get sick? Or, what if I need to sell it? And now I'm stuck paying off this, the contract, and then paying the annual dues. So I think it becomes more of a consideration there. If you're somebody who's buying it outright or putting like a larger payment down and you're going to pay it off over the course of a couple years, may not be that big of a deal, because at that point, then you're able to rent it to people, and you're probably like at least making, covering the dues with the rental income on it. But I'd be curious to know, and looking at, people are buying Riviera resale contracts, and people are buying villas at Disneyland Hotel resale contracts. Now, the Riviera resale price is much lower than the resale price for resorts that have, it has a long expiration, but it's not selling for as much as something like a, Polynesian. At least the last time I checked, it's because it does have that resale restriction.
Well, interestingly, as you're talking, I'm looking at the resale prices right now, just thinking through that same thought process.
But I'd be curious to know, as more resorts have resale restrictions, and as we move towards 2042, and those aren't really an option for anyone to buy because of how short the contract is, presuming that they are going to do something with those resorts that then will somehow, resell them and include resale restrictions, does it become a moot point? Because at some point, all of them are going to have restrictions, and you're going to need to own direct regardless. And will the resale market change vastly?
Well, I think Disney wants the resale market to change vastly. That's a large part of why they're introducing these restrictions into place. The resale market has gotten huge over the last 10 years compared to where it was before. Disney sold a ton of points. They weren't exercising ROFR, so a lot was out on the market. Disney is fervently hoping that I don't think they want the resale market crushed because it does provide an outlet for them and it allows them to keep the pricing nice and high because there is some competition in there. But make no mistake, Disney wants as much of that new direct business as they can possibly get. They don't want the resale market contributing so heavily to all the new buys. When you look at what's on the market, and I'm looking at it now, there's a lot out there. I mean, they have sold hundreds of millions of points, and I'm just looking at one broker, and the list is endless. Interestingly, however, we talk about value. Beach Club, which expires in 2042, in Riviera, which is what, like 2070, are going for the same average price on the resale market. That says a lot about both of those properties, that you can buy both of those contracts, one with only a handful of years left and one with an entire lifetime left, for almost the exact same amount of money.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks to what the resale restrictions are doing to those contracts. I mean, you can't uh, look, because those beach club contracts are going for what? I would 135, 140. Is that what they're listed for?
The lowest is a 125, but it's a huge number of points and it's very stripped out. But you're looking at an average, I'm looking here, 135, 155, 165, 179. I mean, they're all over the 160, 135. Again, huge amount of points, but stripped out until 27. And then when you're looking at Riviera, Riviera's 118, 122, 129, 124, 126. You can buy a Riviera contract for less money than you can buy a Beach Club contract. The Beach Club expires in 2042. Now, granted, the others are a little lower. Beach Club is its own separate animal. You can buy a Boulder Ridge and Old Key West and a Boardwalk for less than Riviera, but not that much less, with the exception of Old Key West. Old Key West is always the outlier. But I mean, you're only $10 or $15 per point away from Riviera at both Boardwalk and Boulder Ridge. That's not a good look for Riviera.
I think that this is definitely a course correction, because when you consider that I bought Beach Club in 2002 for $75 a point, and you look at what they're being listed at, and when you look at Riviera and consider that the people who are selling them probably bought them for $220 a point, they're taking a $100 a point loss on their resale.
Well, Beach Club is making a fair bit of money on that same exact contract.
I mean, not including inflation, because I don't know how that nets out, but just dollar to dollar, I sold my Beach Club contract for more than I bought it for. And that is something that but see, like, that is something that I never thought would have been possible, and I never anticipated, and I never even considered that when I bought it back in 2002. I was never thinking like, oh, what's the resale value on this? I was thinking this is timeshare and I'm not buying it as an investment. I'm buying it for personal enjoyment. And so I think that, DVC members have gotten very spoiled, because I would venture to say that it is the only timeshare product on the market where that is the case, where you are actually could be making more money than you spent on it.
When we looked at our contract, I thought it through. I looked at the average resale of every resort that was on the market at the time. I looked at what they were selling for. We knew, at least for our first contract, we wanted direct. We wanted to have those perks, even knowing they could be pulled at some point. That was important to us. But I absolutely had a spreadsheet that looked at resale value, looked at what the rentals were going for, because I needed to make sure that if everything went to HE double hockey sticks in a year, then I could bail out and not lose my you-know-what.
What year did you buy your first contract?
2016, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I bought it in 2002, and it was a very, very different landscape then. I mean, the resale market was not something that like it is today. And so I think that's where that's why you've got the popularity of the resale, all of these conversations that are happening online about right of first refusal and resale restrictions. This is, you know, it was a game changer that the resale market became as, as big as it did. And now as we move forward, I don't think that it's ever going to go away, but I think that there's like some course correction happening that we're seeing with the resorts that have resale restrictions. It may not, and I don't think that you can compare Disneyland to Disney World because they're two totally, you're choosing between two resorts in Disneyland. Disney World, you're choosing between 14. So it's a completely different animal. And so I think that there are people who would still be willing to buy a resale contract at Disneyland for less than you would buy it direct, but for a pretty penny because you're only missing out on one other resort. Disney World, you buy a resale contract with restrictions. You can only stay at that one resort and you're missing out on 13 other resorts. So
Disneyland, everything is stripped through at least 25, most of them through 26, and they're still between 155 and 180 a point on those contracts. They're still up there. Now, with that said, even stripped out, when you look at what they're getting direct for those are actually not a bad buy.
So, I as somebody who's thinking, I am thinking somewhat long term. I mean, the way that I use my contract now, I don't really care where I stay as long as I'm staying someplace where I, literally, I would stay at any DVC resort happily. I definitely have a ranking, but I would happily stay at any of them. But as I move forward and look farther down the line, does it make sense to buy Lakeshore Lodge? And I mean, my knee jerk reaction is yes, because I think that I'm going to enjoy it for at least the next 16 years. I mean, my kids are in 16 years, my kids will be in their early to mid 30s, and I will be in my mid to late 50s. So, I still have a lot of life to live here. Okay. Hopefully. But come 2042, I think that there is going to be like the landscape is going to change vastly again because all of these resorts are now going to expire. Who knows what they're going to do with them, but they're going to have a lot of inventory to sell. But I think part of the way that they're going to sell it is because if there are resale restrictions, people are going to buy where they want to stay. So people will potentially, because there are still resorts, like when I bought my Copper Creek, I can still stay at Boardwalk or Beach Club if they are available. I mean, they're harder to get. But once even the people who own the contracts, like for me, like a resale contract that I bought, where I'm going to be able to stay come 2042 is also going to be reduced drastically. I'm only going to be able to be staying at, probably half the resorts in about 20 years. So
I think a lot can change in 20 years. And I agree that, with this kind of money invested, you've got to look at it from a long-term strategy. But we've only had ours. I mean, I think we're coming up on 10 years now, and already life has changed so much in that 10 years that we're looking at it completely different. So I think it really comes back to location and buy where you want to stay, which has always been the mantra of DVC. If you know there's a place that you want to be or need to be, then you need to be focused on those contracts versus just the price. So if you know that Lakeshore Lodge is your place and that's where you want to be, you've got to buy at Lakeshore Lodge because you just can't be guaranteed otherwise. And I think location plays out just based on the prices that I've been looking at for the last 20 minutes or so. There's still every bit of demand for the boardwalks, the beach clubs, those that are on top of the theme parks that, have the transportation that we talk about and the pools that we talk about and the restaurants we talk about. And I think that it's strange that when I look at the resale dollars, the new resorts that have the resale restrictions are getting hit far harder than the original resorts because those original resorts still have the prime location and all the magic that surrounds them. it's going to be interesting to watch as time ticks down how the prices on both of those start to shift.
Now, I know your personal feelings on Lakeshore Lodge because of its, basically completely changing the landscape over at Fort Wilderness. But presumably, Lakeshore Lodge could be as popular as Wilderness Lodge because it's essentially the same location, same type of transportation with the boat over to Magic Kingdom, bus to all the other resorts. It's going to be a hotel and a DVC resort. If all of the plans go according to what we've heard, there's going to be, there's the lazy river, there's going to be a restaurant and lounges. There's going to be, it's going to have a lot of amenities and a lot to offer on a great piece of Walt Disney World, property with beautiful views versus something like Riviera, where they literally replaced a moderate resort, a wing of a moderate resort. Now, I mean, I know one could argue, well, like Fort Wilderness is
Yeah, I was about to make that argument.
But if Fort Wilderness was not there, because I mean, you could have made the same argument about Wilderness Lodge.
Yeah, you're actually making my argument for me. If Fort Wilderness wasn't there, I think this is a better buy and an easier sell. I don't doubt that it's going to be popular. I think it's going to have all sorts of things going for it. But its Achilles heel is always going to be the fact that it's on top of the campground. And I just don't think you can take that out of the equation and say, well, if it wasn't by the campground, because it is. And there are going to be people who don't care. There are going to be people who fully support that because they love the vibe. And there are going to be people like me who are completely turned off because of it. I think that it's going to be interesting to watch. I don't think it's going to be a bad resort at all. And I think people are going to jump at it just because of the location and all the amenities you mentioned. But I do think that having the campground right there is going to cause people some pause.
I feel like, truthfully, I feel like it is going to impact the people staying at the campground more than it's going to impact the people staying at Lakeshore Lodge. Because from the overhead maps, it looks like it's going to have its own, its own bus stop.
Good, then I can stay at Wilderness Lodge and not share a bus with the campground anymore. So that suddenly makes Wilderness Lodge look that much better for me.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully that is what they do. And then once you pull up and you're in Wilderness Lodge, I'm sorry, Lakeshore Lodge, unless you have a view of, say, the Pioneer Hall, you're looking at nature or you're looking at Bay Lake, which I think it's going to be very easy for people who are staying at Lakeshore Lodge to forget that they are backing up to the backside of Pioneer Hall, unless, of course, that is what their view is. But, for me, I feel like, I mean, ultimately I said to Kathleen, there's a lot unknown with Lakeshore Lodge. They have not re-released any concept art. So we don't know if it's going to look the same as what they put out there for Reflections, if it's going to be different at all. We don't know what the points chart is going to look like. There's a lot that remains to be seen before I'm like, yes, 100%. I mean, ever since my trip with Allie, I've been feeling more and more like I almost regret that I sold my beach club because I love Crescent Lake so much, but it's really the boardwalk that she loves. And I'm kind of feeling like, to your point, those, the boardwalk contracts are priced, the resale contracts are priced at a pretty attractive price point.
I was just going to say that if you're feeling that, do not come and look at this site, because I'm looking at Wilderness Lodge contracts, Boulder Ridge, for $100 a point. I'm looking at boardwalk contracts for $123 a point. I could get a lot of points at either one of those for less than $20,000. That's a bank transfer for me. Like, I need to stop looking at this site now.
So, I mean, ultimately, I think that there are going to be a lot of factors. I don't think that you can just look at resale restrictions in a vacuum because, like we said, the villas at Disneyland Hotel, I don't think that the resale restrictions are going to make anyone not buy there if they love it there, because they're either choosing between that resort or Grand Californian. And they're very different. They have very different vibes. And they're in walking distance from one another. So that if you're staying at the villas at Disneyland Hotel and you want to walk over to dinner at Grand California, and you can. But then you look at a resort like Riviera where the points charts are way too high for where it is. I mean, as a travel agent, it's like I'm selling Pop Century and Caribbean Beach because of their Skyliner access. I mean, if that's the selling point for Riviera, I mean, you're basically saying Pop Century and moderate and Caribbean are the best value and moderate because they're on the Skyliner line. Riviera, there are many things. The value proposition there is just not there for Riviera and then including the resale restrictions. So, but Lakeshore Lodge, I don't know. I have to look at all of those factors and also look to see if the cabins if that trust is going to then be absorbed into Lakeshore Lodge and if they're going to be a part of that contract as well, because that is attractive to me because the points values of the cabins, as somebody who thinks that, maybe in 10 years I'm going to be traveling with grandchildren, those would be a great place to stay. So
You can talk all you want. I'm sorry. I can buy 100 points at Boardwalk right now for 12.5. Like that just speaks for itself. If you tell me I can have points over there at 250 or something a point, and I can have 100 points at Boardwalk for $12,500, take my money.
it's so true. And having the 11-month advantage to be able to get those standard
At 9 points a night on 100 points, I can stay for 10 nights in a studio. What does 12 nights, 11 nights, 10 nights in a studio cost you rack rate? You've just paid for the contract right there, and you do whatever you want with the points. And you only have until 2042, but you can stay 10 nights a year till 2042, for goodness sake. That's a lot of nights at Disney for $12,000.
Yeah, and if I really wanted to stay at Lakeshore Lodge, I could book myself a hotel room for 2 nights.
You could rent your Boardwalk points and then buy yourself into Lakeshore Lodge. That's what we're probably doing with Disneyland next year. All right,
Yeah.
One parting question. Who is the psycho that purchased 42 points at Beach Club? 42 points. Who is able to purchase 42 points? That would drive me nuts. I couldn't do it. I would go lift up the couch cushions and find extra change to make that a round number.
I felt like it wasn't even an option when I bought. They were like, you can buy in increments of like 25 or something. I mean, I probably made that
But
up
it's
in my head
42.
because like my mind would be thinking in increments. Right. I don't, they must have decided very specifically when they wanted to go and how many points it was going to cost.
It was 21 points per
Yeah.
night, and we want a weekend, period.
Right. Exactly. So yeah. So
It's
I
making
mean,
me
I don't know,
twitch.
Phil. I feel like you are convincing me, especially because listen, my house is under contract. I'm closing in June. I've got 75 Copper Creek points and I am borrowed out until my next use year. So and Lakeshore Lodge hasn't even started selling yet. So I don't know. I'm feeling like
100 points at Boulder Ridge with 12 banked ahead to this year. So you have 112 to use this year and 100 to use next year for $11,000.
Did you just convince me to buy Boardwalk? You did.
You want to go through the Boardwalk prices? I've been staring at them nonstop. Here we go, 150 points. Now, everything's stripped right out till 27, so that's a little unattractive, but $17,700. I've got 100 points at 12.5. That's 100 points at 12,500.
Are there any 200-point contracts?
Yep, you're looking at 26.8, 25.8. You got a 250-point contract for 27.5, 170 for 22,780. And that 170, by the way, has 248 points available right now.
Oh, man.
Yeah, all of a sudden, and now you know why these prices are what they are compared to Riviera. Those properties will just simply always have the allure.
And add to the nostalgia factor. And for anybody who didn't listen to that episode a few weeks ago, maybe like 4 weeks ago, Phil and I talked about the nostalgia factor in terms of where you want to buy. And I was feeling that nostalgia factor strong with Boardwalk. And now just from the financial standpoint, I mean, who needs a direct contract anyway?
Boardwalk, 200 points, 123, still in the 25 use year, 200 in the 26 use year, 200 in the 27 use year, 26.8.
All right. I've got some things to think about.
Yeah, aren't you glad that you recommended this topic today? It's going to cost you some money before the night's over.
Well, I was going to be spending money anyway. This might actually be saving me money because I'm not going to spend as much money on a Lakeshore Lodge contract, and I'm going to be able to make my kids happy by buying at Boardwalk. So
I'm about ready to pull up my crypto account and see if I can unload some Bitcoin. All right, does that wrap us up?
I think that does it.
All right, guys. Thank you as always for listening along. If you could head on over to Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star review. That would be supercalifragilisticexpialidexcellent. Amy?
And if you don't already belong to our Facebook group, you can head over there at DVC Clubhouse, give us a follow. You can find us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. So you can follow us there as well. And until next time, we'll DVC you real soon.
See you guys.
And so our journey comes to an end.
Oh, no, please, can't we go back to page 1 and do it all over again?
Started this thing together, and that's how we'll finish it.
Because that, my friends, is where the magic lives.
Top of the earth.